So we're hearing some common themes here about students and youth and the way they're using the internet, the way they want to use the internet. One thing I'm hearing is they want to interact with the other users of the site. Another common theme I'm hearing is they want to contribute to the story. And another way to put it, the way James put it well, is they don't want to see total control to the publisher. So those days are over. Your users, your audience is part of the story now. And so I'd like to explore how each of you are catering to these interests of students and curating them as well. I mean, we all know that to simply open up your website to UserGen and let it grow unfettered is not exactly the answer as well. So Ariel, why don't you tell us how you're doing it?
Well, I think that we're different than some of the other companies here because we kind of created the Amanda project with that in mind. I mean, we knew that the user generation and user participation was an integral part of us telling the story. And I think that's something that has come up a lot that's really, really important is when you're doing that, it's really finding a balance between both encouraging them to participate, but then, which usually means that you have to ask them things in a very specific way. Like, I think that it was great what you were saying about like having an actual question. I think you can't just say like, what do you think? Like, I think it needs to be a targeted question. And then also having ways that you're funneling that so that you are creating this space where it's curated and kind of not just this chaos. And so that's what we were doing with the call to action and things like that. Does that make sense?
Okay, thanks. James, do you want to take a shot at this?
Sure. One thing that I think is we experience that's interesting with regard to user-generated content is the fact that there's still what I think a lot of the people who are in this room probably take for granted in terms of the way user-generated content works on the internet very much is not taken for granted in the education space. So one example for us is that we do a lot of educating with universities and study abroad providers regarding what do I do if someone slanders my institution or says something that I disagree with, etc. And this is one of the biggest concerns. They're really nervous about it. And you know, this problem has been solved. If you look on Facebook, if you look on Yelp, which is my favorite example, this problem has been solved. It just requires careful curation of the content on your site and responsible terms of use policies. But it's something that really causes a lot of concern for our partners and in education, and I think it will continue to be a barrier in the adoption of social web technologies for institutions for the next little while.
Okay. Michael, are you seeing the same thing in terms of you're approaching university, trying to introduce them to social applications, Facebook? Do they have the same concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're ever talking to institutions as part of your business, that's actually like one of the primary conversations you're going to have, and it will actually guide a lot of their decision making. Is how carefully you've thought through how the balance between user-generated content and user engagement and this kind of careful brand management, if you will. They are starting to get the idea that they're no longer completely in control of their brand, but they do want to, and they are slowly becoming ready to I guess, be open to how their audiences interpret their brand and how they want to control the messaging there. However, basically that's just a huge concern of theirs. But I would actually chime in on the user-generated content conversation. The long tail of user-generated content with no audience is enormous, right? And the main reason that people try to contribute content to the internet is because they're trying to find an audience or an outlet. And if you don't give that the right context and make it discoverable, it's not going to be meaningful to the users who are contributing, and you're going to lose them really quickly, right? So, it isn't just, you make it so that people can make comments or throw out videos and suddenly, everybody comes. It's not a if you build it, they will come phenomenon. It has to do with a lot of kind of careful community planning and feature planning around making those users who do contribute content find an audience.
Can I kind of chime in? Yeah. We do a lot with user-generated content too, and we think a lot about it. One of the advantages we have is on Unigo, on a lot of sites where users are commenting on things, like on Yelp, the people who are commenting on restaurants aren't necessarily chefs, or the people who are commenting on a product on Amazon aren't necessarily the people who build that product. But in the case of Unigo, we have an advantage that students are pretty much the expert on what it means to be a student at any particular university. So we start with kind of a privileged user base that they're going to be able to create great stuff. But going past that, even though that they know a lot about their university, we create these long-form essay-based surveys. So I'm actually going to stand up just because I feel awkward saying that. We create these long-form essay-based surveys. So it generally makes each review a little bit more comprehensive, and it also elevates the quality of the writing. Once the reviews come in, we have an editor who reads through all of it. Anything that's factually inaccurate, we don't put up, or any personal attacks we don't put up. But, and sometimes to the school's consternation, we're fine talking about sex, drugs, rock and roll, parties, things that the school isn't going to love. If it's part of the experience of being a student, it's going to go up there. Our editors then create their own synopsis of the school from having done months of research and from having read every single review. But we'll hyperlink, so instead of giving quotes from students and making them totally out of context, every quote links so you can see who wrote it and everything that student has to say. And then you can also sub-search by all these different criteria. So we try to add professionalism and focus to user-gen content, and found, like you're saying, you can't just give a free-form text box and hope that someone's going to create something of value. You have to try to direct them to it, and it's also not enough just to open up a platform and hope users will come. In our case, we have this very detailed multi-month process to go and not just get content, but also get a representative sample within that content. I think those are the two biggest things we've learned. It's just you have to find a strategy to get the content, and find a strategy once you do get it to provide guidelines and limitations to make sure that content is powerful and useful.
Okay, thanks, Jordan.
You can tell Jordan served on many panels before because he both just answered the first and second question at the same time. So I appreciate that very much.